Hi everyone. Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot, as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. The earth hummed beneath Elowyn's unshod feet as she spun, the supple leather of her sparring gloves molding to her grip. Across from her, Greta mirrored her readiness, a wide grin illuminating her features. Sunlight, fragmented by the dense foliage overhead, painted shifting mosaics on their faces as they circled, a wordless preamble to the clash about to unfold. Elowyn initiated with a deceptive jab, a lightning-fast probe toward Greta's shoulder, but Greta, quicksilver in her reflexes, flowed aside. "Having fun yet, little wolf?" Greta teased, her tone playful, yet edged with challenge. "Is that all the fire you can muster?" A sardonic smile touched Elowyn's lips. She surged forward. A torrent of strikes, punches, kicks, a calculated onslaught. Greta absorbed the assault, deflecting and countering with unexpected power. A blow connected with Elowyn's ribs, a sharp reminder of Greta's honed skill. This was more than mere play, it was a crucible, a tempering of steel before the looming selection rite. The prospect alone sent a jolt of rebellion through Elowyn. She redoubled her efforts, channeling her defiance into the dance of combat. She was the Alpha's heir, not a trinket to be bartered. With a snarl, she unleashed a whirling kick, connecting solidly with Greta's forearm. Greta staggered, momentarily unbalanced. Elowyn seized the opportunity, sweeping Greta's legs from under her. Greta landed heavily, a whoop of laughter escaping her lips as Elowyn straddled her. "Yield! Yield! You win!" Greta wheezed, her eyes alight with amusement. "But only because you fight with the fury of a demon unleashed." Elowyn released her, extending a hand in comradeship. As Greta righted herself, dusting earth from her tunic, Elowyn felt a pang of remorse. She held no desire to injure Greta, but the need to prove herself burned fiercely within her. "Sorry," she mumbled, averting her gaze. Greta dismissed it with a wave. "Don't be. You were magnificent. You'll obliterate them all at the right." Her smile softened, replaced by a perceptive glance. "Unless you actually find someone who captures your heart," Elowyn scoffed. "Don't be absurd. You know my feelings regarding that antiquated custom." "The right. A week hence. A forced march toward a fate not her own. A curated exhibition, where wolves without partners presented themselves, hoping for a connection deemed blessed by the moon goddess. Elowyn viewed it as a gilded cage, promising affection and stability while offering only constraint. A horn echoed across the clearing, its somber resonance marking the midday meal. "The stomach calls," Greta said, clapping Elowyn's shoulder. "Fear not. I shall run interference with the eager suitors. I shall inform them you are afflicted with a rare and highly communicable case of bog rot." Elowyn managed a weak grin that the anxiety in her stomach coiled tighter. Bog rot would not deter her mother. The great hall throbbed with life, the air saturated with the savory fragrance of roasting game and aromatic herbs. Elowyn surveyed the scene, locating her mother, Lyra, presiding at the high table, her bearing unyielding and regal. Lyra embodied the very essence of an Alpha's consort, her silvery hair flawlessly arranged, her emerald gaze sharp and discerning. Elowyn's pace slowed. Their bond had always been fraught, a constant friction between Lyra's staunch traditionalism and Elowyn's rebellious nature. As Elowyn drew closer, Lyra's eyes flicked to her, a fleeting expression of disapproval gracing her features. "Elowyn," she stated, her voice laced with ice. "You are tardy." And what accounts for this disarray? You appear to have tangled with a bear. Sparring with Greta, Elowen countered, taking a seat opposite her mother. Lyra sighed, a sound laden with weariness. Must you perpetually engage in such unladylike pursuits? The right draws near. Your focus should be on presenting yourself advantageously, not accumulating bruises. Elowen's jaw tightened. I am perfectly capable of safeguarding myself, Mother. I require no mate for protection. Lyra's eyes flared. That is not the crux of the matter, Elowen. The right signifies more than mere defense. It fortifies our pack, cements alliances, and safeguards our lineage. Our pack possesses ample strength, Elowen shot back. We have no need to pawn off the Alpha's daughter to secure our standing. Do not be so artless, Lyra rebuked. Influence is fragile, Elowen. It demands cultivation and defense. The right serves as a linchpin in that endeavor. Elowen pushed her meal aside, her appetite extinguished. I find it difficult to believe you are compelling me to participate in this. I am not compelling you, Elowen, Lyra responded, her tone softening a fraction. I am guiding you. My desire is for your well-being, and I hold the conviction that securing a steadfast, worthy mate serves as the most auspicious path for you. Elowen rose abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the flagstones. My path lies for me to determine, Mother, and I require no one to chart its course. She turned sharply and strode from the great hall, leaving Lyra gazing after her, a confluence of vexation and sorrow etched on her face. The cool night air offered a soothing balm against Elowen's mounting irritation. She discovered Grenna perched on a moss-covered boulder near the forest's boundary, meticulously honing her hunting knife. A challenging repast? Greta inquired, without lifting her gaze. Elowen sank down beside her. You cannot imagine. She recounted the discourse with her mother, her frustration amplified with each word. I simply cannot comprehend why she remains blind to my contentment as I am. Why must she force me down this masquerade? Greta ceased her sharpening and turned toward Elowen, her expression earnest. Your mother holds you dear, Elowen. She simply possesses a different interpretation of what affection entails. Perhaps, Elowen conceded. However, I find myself feeling as if she seeks to dominate me, as if she lacks faith in my ability to make informed choices. Greta sighed deeply. I am aware it is not what you desire to hear, but she does raise a valid point. The pack benefits from solid alliances, and a worthy mate can prove to be an invaluable ally. Elowen glared at her. So, you are now championing her stance? Nay, Greta countered swiftly. I am simply endeavoring to view matters from her vantage. However, I am also intimately acquainted with you. Elowen, I am cognizant of the profound value you place on your autonomy, and I would never condone you being ensnared in a union that brings you anything but joy. Elowen rested her head on Greta's shoulder, the tension gradually receding from her frame. That constitutes my apprehension, Greta. Losing my essence. Morphing into someone unrecognizable simply to appease my mother or the pack. Greta encircled her with an arm. You will not, she affirmed resolutely. You are Elowen, the Alpha's daughter, the most formidable warrior I know. You will never relinquish your true self. Elowen closed her eyes, drawing strength from Greta's unwavering loyalty. Yet, deep within, a seed of uncertainty persisted. What if her mother spoke the truth? What if she was succumbing to selfishness, prioritizing her own desires above the welfare of the pack? And what if, despite her valiant efforts, the selection rite altered everything irrevocably? The moon ascended higher in the inky sky, casting elongated shadows across the forest floor. Eowyn knew she could not evade the inevitable forever. The right loomed, and she had to discover a means to confront it without sacrificing her very being in the process. The cost of self-reliance, she was discovering, could exact a steep price. The healer's touch the air thrummed, thick with anticipation, heavy with unspoken expectations. Braziers blazed, casting flickering shadows that danced across the faces of the assembled pack. The mating ceremony. Eowyn stood rigid, the woven silver of her ceremonial dress feeling like chains against her skin. The scent of pine and damp earth mingled with the sweet, cloying fragrance of the moon-petal garlands. A scent that usually brought her comfort now felt suffocating. Her mother, Lyra, stood beside her, regal and composed, her hand resting lightly on Eowyn's arm. "Remember your duty, daughter," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the rising murmur of the crowd. Duty. The word echoed in Eowyn's mind, a cold, hard stone against the fire of her rebellious spirit. The elders began their chant, a low, resonant drone that vibrated through the very ground beneath their feet. The pack responded, their voices rising and falling in a rhythmic wave, a call to the ancient spirits, a plea for blessing on the unions to come. Eowyn's gaze swept across the faces in the crowd, hopeful, anxious, yearning, all searching for their other half, the missing piece of their soul. A piece Eowyn wasn't sure she wanted to find. Then he appeared, Bryn. He walked with a quiet grace, a gentle strength that radiated from him like the warmth of the morning sun. His eyes, the color of moss after a spring rain, met hers across the clearing, and a jolt, a raw, untamed energy, ripped through Eowyn. It was as if a dam had broken within her, unleashing a torrent of sensation she had never known existed. The scent of him, sandalwood and wildflowers, grounded and free, filled her senses, overwhelming her. The bond. It flared, undeniable, incandescent. It was a living thing, reaching out, drawing them together with an invisible force. Eowyn stumbled, her breath catching in her throat. Bryn's expression softened with concern. He took a step towards her, his hand outstretched. And fear, sharp and cold, pierced through the intoxicating haze of the bond. Fear of losing herself, of being consumed, of surrendering the hard-won independence she had fought so fiercely to protect. Love was a vulnerability, a weakness, a chink in her armor. And Eowyn wouldn't, allow herself to be vulnerable. The chanting faded, replaced by a hushed silence as all eyes turned to them. Elder Rowan, her face etched with the wisdom of centuries, stepped forward. "Eowyn, daughter of Lyra, Alpha's heir, do you accept Bryn, son of Ilara, as your chosen mate?" The words hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Eowyn looked at Bryn, really looked at him. She saw the kindness in his eyes, the gentle curve of his lips, the unwavering loyalty that shone in his very being. He would be a good mate, a strong provider, a loving partner, everything her pack, her mother, expected her to want. But it wasn't what she wanted. "No," Eowyn said, her voice ringing out clear and cold in the stunned silence. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Lyra's hand tightened on her arm, her fingers digging into her flesh. Bryn flinched as if struck. His eyes, moments ago filled with warmth and hope, clouded with confusion and pain. Elder Rowan's expression remained impassive, but Eowyn could sense the weight of her disapproval, the disappointment that radiated from her like a palpable force. "Eowyn," Lyra hissed, her voice dangerously low. "What have you done?" Eowyn met her mother's gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. "I cannot," she said, her voice trembling despite her efforts to control it. "I will not be bound." She looked back at Bryn, her gaze unwavering, defiant. "I reject you," she said, the words like shards of glass in the air. His face crumpled. The light in his eyes flickered and died, replaced by a hollow emptiness that made Eloin's stomach clench with a guilt she refused to acknowledge. He stood frozen, ashen-faced, the rejection echoing around him like a death knell. The bond, still thrumming faintly beneath the surface, felt like a brand, a searing reminder of what she had done. Then, slowly, deliberately, Bryn turned and walked away. The crowd parted before him, their whispers following him like shadows. He didn't look back. Whispers in the woods. Eloin's first inhalation was a ragged pull, tasting of cinders and remorse. Sunlight, fractured by the canopy beyond her window, splashed fractured light across the floorboards, a cruel parody of her internal paralysis. The bond, once a vibrant song resonating in her very core, was now a broken lyre, leaving behind a hollowness that spread like frost. She pushed herself upright, the rough blanket a tactile reminder of the solace she'd spurned. A silent scream threatened to erupt. Bryn. His name was a phantom ache, the lingering warmth of a fire long extinguished. Below, the usual morning cacophony was muffled, replaced by a weighty, unsettling silence. Anxious murmurs, like dust motes, swirled in the corners. Alpha Lyra, her mother, sat at the head of the long table, worry carving deep lines into her face. The untouched meal before her spoke volumes about the disquiet gripping the pack. "Eloin," Lyra began, her voice unusually gentle, yet laden with command. "He's ventured out." Eloin's breath caught. "Ventured where?" she managed, barely audible. "The murmuring mire," her mother stated, her gaze unwavering. A wave of dismay rippled through the room. The murmuring mire. A place relegated to cautionary tales, defined by ancient twisted trees and perpetual gloom. A place where reality frayed, where phantoms pirouetted, and voices on the wind could shatter a wolf's sanity. No sane wolf willingly entered. Guilt, a searing poison, coursed through Eloin. She had been the catalyst. Her denial, her apprehension, had driven him into that abyss. Greta, her closest confidant and training partner, laid a hand on Eloin's forearm. Her eyes, usually alight with mischief, were dimmed with apprehension. "Don't," she whispered, her voice a soothing balm. "Don't shoulder the burden." But Eloin knew the blame was hers. Her rejection had been a deliberate maneuver, a fortress erected against the vulnerability of affection. She'd prioritized obligation over longing, autonomy over union. The price of that decision now stared her down. Later, traversing the training grounds, she found the atmosphere dense with unease. Wolves clustered in small groups, their voices hushed and agitated. She felt their gazes, assessing, accusing. The freely offered respect now felt transactional, tainted by skepticism. Fragments of conversations drifted to her ears, whispers of fear and uncertainty. He possessed unparalleled strength. That connection, it was undeniable. She turned him away the reasoning. Torin, shoulders rigid, stood near the training circle's edge, surrounded by younger wolves, his voice cutting through the air. She placed her own desires above the welfare of the pack, he declared, his tone dripping with condemnation. Bryn represented our future. He would have made for a formidable alpha. Now the future is uncertain. Eloin halted, fists clenched. Torin had always harbored ambition, forever seeking validation. He perceived her as an impediment, a rival for leadership. Her rejection of Bryn handed him an advantage, an opportunity to erode her authority. He craved guidance, not repudiation. Torin pressed, his voice escalating. She should have nurtured the bond, guided him, fortified him. Now he's lost, swallowed by the shadows, and she bears the weight. One of the younger wolves, a gangly youth named Reese, interjected. But doesn't the Alpha's heir choose her own course? Isn't it her prerogative? Torin scoffed, a dismissive sound. Prerogative? Privileges are earned, not bestowed. She inherited the title, granted, but she hasn't garnered the respect that accompanies it. Not after this debacle. He pivoted, his gaze locking with Elowen's. A spark of defiance ignited in his eyes. She embraced isolation. We'll see how isolated she feels when the pack crumbles around her. Elowen returned his stare, jaw firm. She wouldn't expose her vulnerability, her misgivings. She wouldn't allow him to break her spirit. But as she turned and moved on, she felt the weight of his words, the sting of his treachery. Torin's ambition was a serpent coiled, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. That night, slumber eluded her grasp. The soughing of the forest seemed to infiltrate her room, carried on the night winds, echoing with Bryn's name. She pictured him lost in the impenetrable darkness, besieged by shadows, his heart shattered. Had she condemned him to an existence worse than oblivion? Had she bartered her own liberty for his ruin? She rose, drifting to the window. The moon was a mere crescent, painting long, distorted shadows across the land. The murmuring mire loomed in the distance, a dark, impassable entity. She could almost feel its allure, its insidious siren song calling her name. She knew she couldn't remain here, immobilized by remorse and dread. Action was imperative. She had to retrieve him. But as she stood there, gazing into the abyss, a chilling insight crystallized. The perils of the murmuring mire were not her only adversary. She faced a far more formidable opponent, the darkness dwelling within. The darkness that had compelled her to sever the bond, the darkness threatening to engulf her completely. And she lacked the certainty of her strength to overcome it. Shadows stir the calendar offered no solace, each sunrise a listless imitation of the one before. The whispering woods, once a vibrant tapestry of green, succumbed to a slow decay, a sickly pallor creeping across the forest floor. The air, previously a balm of pine and damp earth, now reeked of ozone and decay, a taste like old blood lingering on the tongue. Elowen stood beside the training grounds, the familiar tang of exertion tainted by this foulness. Junior pack members practiced with waning enthusiasm, their movements heavy, their expressions mirroring her own growing dread. It began subtly, a brittle leaf here, a silent bird there. Now, corruption was an undeniable force, a presence you could almost taste. A guttural snarl tore through the oppressive stillness. From the trees, a hunting party emerged, horrors unlike any Elowen had encountered. They flowed with an unnatural grace, shadows solidifying into menacing forms, eyes blazing with emerald malice. Their claws, elongated obsidian shards, wept a viscous ebon fluid. Panic erupted. The young wolves, undertrained and discouraged, scattered like startled birds. Elowen shifted, the change a painful liberation. A roar ripped from her throat, a challenge reverberating through the blighted woods, and she launched herself at the closest dark figure. Her claws glanced off it like vapor. The creature emitted a screech that frayed her nerves, retaliating with a swipe that burned through her pelt, leaving a searing brand. Greta appeared at her side, her snarl laced with concern, her usually bright gaze clouded. "Elowin, these are unnatural. We can't apply our usual tactics." Greta braced herself, fur standing on end. "We must retreat, safeguard the den." Back to back, they became a whirling storm of fur and fang against the encroaching gloom. More emerged from the depths of the woods, their numbers seemingly infinite. A glacial fear gripped Elowin's heart. This wasn't an attack. It was an infestation. Finally, joined by veteran fighters, they pushed the shadow beasts back into the woods. Yet, the victory felt like ash in her mouth. Several pack members were wounded, their injuries oozing a corrupted blackness. Fear permeated the air, heavy as a shroud. Later, the Elder's glade hummed with a fraught quiet. A bonfire sparked and popped, throwing agitated shadows across worried faces. Elder Rowan, his features scored with deep lines of apprehension, addressed the pack, his voice roughened by age and anxiety. "The Whispering Woods," he began, his gaze encompassing them all, "is ailing. A darkness thrives at its core, poisoning the land and deforming its inhabitants." He paused, his eyes hardening as they settled upon Elowin. "This darkness, it thrives on anguish, on remorse, on the specters that haunt our hearts." The Elder's words struck Elowin like a physical blow. Regret gnawed at her, a persistent reminder of Bren, of her rejection that had sent him into the mire. "We must remain watchful," Rowan continued, his tone gaining urgency. "We must protect our territory, defend our young, and purge ourselves of the darkness threatening to engulf us." He raised a knotted hand, his eyes locked on the swirling smoke ascending from the fire. "Heed the woods' whispers, for they carry the seeds of ruin. Beware the shadows that stir at night, for they crave our souls." The ceremony concluded with a palpable sense of disquiet. As the pack dispersed, Greta lingered, her hand squeezing Elowin's arm. "Don't let him break you, Elowin," she murmured. "This isn't on you." Elowin shook her head, avoiding Greta's sympathetic gaze. "But it is, Greta. I abandoned Bren. I let him wander into the mire. Now this is here, and I cannot shake the feeling that it's my fault." Greta tightened her grip. "You can't carry all this weight alone. We'll fight this together. We always have." However, Elowin knew, with chilling certainty, that this was her burden to bear. She had to discover a way to atone for her mistakes, to confront her inner demons and the growing evil that threatened to consume her pack. Unseen, unheard, Jareth watched from the forest's edge. Shrouded in shadow, his eyes glittered with icy satisfaction as he surveyed the pack's terror and disorder. A cruel smirk twisted his lips. "Feeble," he breathed, his voice a low, poisonous murmur. "They are more vulnerable than I anticipated, and their precious alpha's air crippled by guilt, flawless." He reached out, his hand stroking the bark of a gnarled, blighted tree. A surge of dark energy emanated from his fingertips, coursing through the twisted branches and into the earth itself. "The woods echo with my name," he murmured, his voice resonating with chilling elation. "Soon, they will chant my ballad of vengeance." He chuckled, a hollow, unsettling sound that reverberated through the corrupted forest. "They spurned me. They banished me. Now, they will suffer the repercussions. And Elowin, she will be the first to crumble." His shadow deepened, swallowing him whole, as he vanished into the darkness, leaving only the frigid promise of his retribution lingering in the air. His machinations were not merely about annihilating the pack, but about perverting their virtues, turning their love and fidelity into instruments of despair. He would incite their self-destruction, fueled by misplaced faith and forlorn hope. The shadows he commanded were not mere brutes, they were extensions of his will, capable of igniting dissent and exploiting the pack's deepest anxieties. He was not just a bitter outcast, he was a conductor, orchestrating their doom from the shadows. Into the dark the vision of the tainted wolf, its gaze a blaze of unholy light, gnawed at Elowyn's core. In its warped visage she glimpsed Bryn, or rather, the spectre of the friend she cherished. A frigid tide of guilt overwhelmed her. This was more than the pack's fate, it was about rescuing him. "I have to enter," she declared, her tone flat, a bulwark against the inner turmoil. Anya, her mother, looked up from the strategy table, worry creasing her face. "Absolutely not, Elowyn. The risk is too great. We have no grasp of the horrors within." "Precisely why I must," Elowyn countered, her voice gaining an edge. "Someone needs to uncover the source of this affliction and how to quell it. Standing idle, barricaded, achieves nothing. Bryn is lost out there." Anya pushed herself to her feet, her expression hardening. "Do you believe I am indifferent to Bryn's plight? That I haven't been consumed with apprehension since his disappearance? This isn't some rash rescue attempt, Elowyn. This is a war, and you are my heir. I cannot jeopardize you." "Then dispatch another," Elowyn challenged, anger simmering beneath the surface. "But who is deemed disposable enough to cast into that abyss? The warriors vital to our defense? Shall we offer up one of the children as sacrifice?" "No, mother. This burden rests with me." The word hung in the air, weighted with unspoken implications. The warrior's mask dissolved from Anya's face, replaced by a mother's soft regard. She reached out, cradling Elowyn's cheek. "This isn't your burden alone, child. A choice was made, however agonizing. A choice that condemned him," Elowyn murmured, recoiling from the touch. "A choice that unleashed this contagion upon our people. I must set it right. It is the least I owe him." Anya's shoulders slumped in defeat. She recognized that look in her daughter's eyes. Once Elowyn was resolved, she was as unyielding as the ancient boundary stones. "Allow me to at least send a guard, someone seasoned." "No," Elowyn stated, unwavering. "Fewer exposed, better the odds. Speed and stealth are paramount. A contingent would only attract unwanted attention." "Attention from whom, Elowyn? What are you concealing?" Anya probed, suspicion coloring her tone. Elowyn hesitated. Revealing Jareth's twisted infatuation would only add to her mother's anxieties. "Nothing specific. It's simply wiser alone. I will exercise caution, I promise." The lie left a bitter taste. Anya scrutinized her daughter, her gaze piercing. Finally she relented with a sigh. "Vow to return, though to avoid recklessness." "I vow," Elowyn responded, the words ringing false even to her own ears. Later, while Elowyn was assembling her supplies, a shape darkened the tent entrance. It was Greta, her face ashen, yet resolute. "I'm accompanying you," she declared, her tone brooking no argument. "Greta, no. You heard my mother. The danger is too profound," Elowyn protested, though a seed of relief took root within her. "I don't care," Greta retorted, crossing her arms. "You are not venturing in there alone. We are pack, Elowyn. We safeguard each other. Besides," she added with a wry smile, "who else will prevent you from acting rashly?" A genuine smile touched Elowyn's lips, a momentary respite from the weight crushing her. "I value it, Greta, truly, but I cannot ask this of you." "You aren't requesting. I'm informing," Greta insisted, closing the distance. "I understand what Bryn signifies to you. And I see how you're shouldering the blame for these events, but you cannot bear this alone. Let me share the load. Let me be there. Elowyn met Greta's gaze, seeing the steadfast loyalty, the fierce camaraderie that had weathered countless storms. Argument was futile, she knew, and a silent part of her yearned for Greta's presence. Very well, she conceded, a wave of gratitude washing over her. But you heed my words. Should matters worsen, you retreat. No defiance. Vow it, Greta. Greta nodded, her expression grave. I vow. But the same to you. We remain together. We return together. Together, Elowyn echoed, a pulse of warmth chasing away the emptiness. Standing at the threshold of whispering woods, the air thickened, the temperature plummeting. The trees towered, their limbs contorted like skeletal claws reaching to capture them. The silence was eerie, marred only by the scurrying of unseen creatures within the undergrowth. Elowyn inhaled sharply, the stench of decay mingling with something acrid and alien assailing her senses. The encroaching darkness felt palpable, seeping into their very marrow. "Ready?" she asked, turning towards Greta. Greta swallowed hard, but her gaze remained fixed on the impenetrable shadows. "As I'll ever be." Elowyn nodded, her hand instinctively going to the knife strapped to her thigh. "Then let's descend into the shadows." Exchanging a knowing glance, a silent pact forged between them, they breached the boundary, leaving behind the familiar world and venturing into the corrupted heart of the forest. The trees seemed to constrict around Opere, them, swallowing them in their embrace as they dissolved into the gloom. The hunt was now underway. Twisted paths, the first tendrils of corruption, snaked around Elowyn's boots, even before the true forest began. Twisted branches, black as pitch, clawed at the sky, their leaves brittle and whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The air hung thick and heavy, a suffocating blanket woven with the stench of decay and something else, something ancient and deeply wrong. Greta walked close behind her, the familiar scent of pine and damp earth a small comfort in the growing darkness. Elowyn pulled her knife, the silver gleaming faintly in the gloom. "Stay sharp," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the rustling of unseen things. A guttural snarl tore through the silence. From the shadows emerged a wolf that twisted. Rom. Its fur was matted and falling out in clumps. Its eyes glowed with a sickly green light, and bone protruded at unnatural angles. 2 more followed, then another. They were fast, driven by a hunger that went beyond instinct, a hunger fueled by the corruption itself. Elowyn lunged, her silver knife a blur. The first creature fell with a choked whimper, black blood staining the corrupted earth. Greta was a whirlwind of fury, her shifted form a brown blur of teeth and claws. They fought back to back, a dance of death amidst the twisted trees. Elowyn felt a sharp pain in her side as one of the creatures managed to rake its claws across her flesh. She ignored it, adrenaline masking the pain. They had to keep moving. Finally, the last creature fell, its unnatural glow fading into the darkness. Elowyn leaned against a tree, breathing heavily. Greta shifted back, her own fur matted with blood. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Elowyn nodded, pressing a hand to her side. "Just a scratch. We need to keep going." She scanned their surroundings. The forest seemed to press in on them, the twisted trees like silent observers. "This place, it's different than I imagined." Greta shivered. "It feels alive, but in a sick way." They pressed on, deeper into the woods. The air grew heavier, the silence more profound. Elowen could feel the corruption seeping into her, a dark tendril reaching for her mind. She fought it back, focusing on Bryn, on the need to find a cure. The trees seemed to shift and twist around them, playing tricks on their eyes. Shadows danced in their periphery, whispering doubts and fears. Suddenly, the path ahead shimmered, the trees blurring into an indistinct mass. A voice, soft as the rustling of leaves, echoed through the woods. "Lost, little wolves?" Elowen stopped, her hand tightening on her knife. "Who's there?" A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and slender, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the forest itself. Her hair was a cascade of leaves and vines, her clothes woven from the very fabric of the woods. It was Lysandra. "I am Lysandra," she said, her voice a melodic whisper. "And I have been expecting you." Elowen lowered her knife slightly. "You know why we're here." Lysandra smiled, a knowing, unsettling expression. "The forest whispers its secrets to me. You seek to heal the wound, to mend the broken. But be warned, little wolf, the path to healing is paved with pain." "We're not afraid of pain," Greta said, stepping forward. "We just want to help our pack." Lysandra's gaze shifted to Greta, her eyes piercing. "Loyalty is a virtue, but blind loyalty can be a curse. Be sure you know who you are fighting for, and what you are willing to sacrifice." Elowen frowned. "What do you mean?" Lysandra tilted her head, her eyes like pools of moonlight. "The corruption, it doesn't simply infect the body. It twists the soul. It amplifies the darkness that already exists within. To heal Bryn, you must first understand the source of the corruption. But even more importantly, you must understand the darkness that resides in your own heart." Elowen felt a chill run down her spine. "And how do we do that?" Lysandra stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Look to the heart of the forest. There, you will find the answer you seek. But be warned, little wolf, the truth is often more painful than the lie." She paused, her gaze intense. "And remember this, the greatest strength lies not in rejecting the darkness, but in embracing the light within it." Then, as quickly as she had appeared, Lysandra faded back into the shadows, leaving Elowen and Greta alone in the twisted woods, her words hanging in the air like a haunting melody. The path ahead remained shrouded in darkness, but now, Elowen knew, the true battle lay not just with the creatures of the forest, but with the shadows within herself. The dark alpha's gaze Elowen's breath caught, a ragged rasp against the cloying air. Each stride was agony, her injured leg a fiery brand. Yet Greta's steadfast presence propelled her forward. The verdant trees of memory now menaced with ebony limbs, their leaves whispering morbid secrets. The atmosphere reeked of decay, laced with a sharp, metallic tang reminiscent of aged blood. A chilling ripple raced across her flesh, an instinctual warning she couldn't disregard. "Something's deeply wrong," Greta breathed, her hand flying to the dagger at her thigh. "Worse than before." Elowen nodded, her gaze darting across the increasingly choked undergrowth. The corrupted wolves had been brutal, but this bore the mark of intent, as if a cruel entity observed and manipulated them. The heavy silence, punctuated only by the grind of their boots on the fallen detritus, was almost unbearable. Then they broke through the final tangle and into a clearing, but the hoped-for sanctuary was a nightmare made manifest. The ground was fractured, weeping a viscous obsidian fluid, the very heart of the corruption. At its center stood a figure, towering and imposing, cloaked in an eerie, self-generated twilight. Silhouetted against the defiled sky, his features were indistinct, yet his presence emanated a chilling power that sent tremors of fear through Elwyn all. As they drew nearer, the shadows writhed, and the figure turned, revealing his face. It was Bryn, yet a grotesque parody. His once warm hazel eyes blazed with profane light, swirling vortexes of shadow that seemed to bore into Elwyn's soul. Skin stretched paper-thin over sharpened cheekbones created a visage both cruel and alien. The familiar curve of his mouth had vanished, replaced by a rigid line. His frame was larger, potent, radiating an untamed energy that crackled audibly. He was clad in clothes of absolute black, fashioned from an impossible material that seemed to devour light itself. Her heart hammered a frantic tattoo of disbelief and dread. "Bryn?" she croaked, her voice a mere thread. He tilted his head, his gaze sweeping over her with glacial disinterest, as if she were nothing but an annoyance. No spark of recognition, no warmth, no echo of the boy she'd known, the boy she had abandoned. "Bryn?" she repeated, louder, desperation infusing her tone. "It's me, Elwyn." A slow, mocking smile twisted his lips. "Elwyn," he echoed, the name foreign and dissonant on his tongue. Such a delicate thing. His voice, too, was altered, deeper, imbued with a dark resonance that sent shivers cascading down her spine. It was Bryn's, yet warped, tainted, laced with a menace that made her want to disappear. What happened to you?" she stammered, searching his desecrated face for a trace of the boy she had loved. He advanced, the earth cracking and splintering beneath his feet. The air thrummed with malevolent energy, and a wave of terror threatened to drown Elwyn. "Happened to me?" he countered, his eyes narrowing to slits. "I was awakened. The truth was revealed. The weakness, the frailty, the lies you all embrace." His gaze locked onto hers, and Elwyn felt herself sinking into the abyss within him. No affection, no pity, only a raw, searing hatred, focused entirely on her. "You did this," she whispered, the realization a physical blow. Her rejection, her timidity, had propelled him into the heart of this corruption, and this abomination was the consequence. A harsh, grating laugh ripped from his throat, echoing across the blighted clearing. "I am your creation, Elwyn, the Dark Alpha, and now you will reap what you have sown." Greta stepped between Elwyn and Bryn, a shield of defiance. "Stay back," she warned, her voice taut. "That's not him, Elwyn. That is something else." Bryn's gaze flicked to Greta, dismissing her with a look of utter contempt. "A faithful cur," he sneered. "Protecting its mistress. How touching." He raised a hand, and a tendril of dark energy lashed out, aimed at Greta. She barely dodged, throwing herself aside as the energy scorched the air, leaving behind a patch of blackened ash. "Run, Elwyn!" Greta shouted, defiance blazing in her eyes. "Get out of here." Elwyn hesitated, torn between loyalty and the primal urge to flee the monstrous presence of the Dark Alpha. But Greta was right. She was injured, vulnerable, her presence a liability. With a final, desperate glance at Greta, she turned and fled, plunging back into the corrupted woods. Bryn's laughter pursued her, a chilling reminder of the monster she had spawned and the encroaching darkness. As she stumbled through the gnarled trees, tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. The throbbing in her leg was insignificant compared to the ache in her soul. She had rejected Bryn to protect herself, but in doing so, she had unleashed a force of destruction, something that threatened to consume everything. And now, She must find a way to end it, even if it meant confronting the darkness within herself, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Echoes of the past, Elowen faltered, the gnarled roots of the diseased trees snagging at her boots as she desperately tried to widen the gap between herself and Bryn. Each inhale was a painful rasp, a searing ache blooming in her side where a splinter of corrupted wood had found its mark. Greta's guttural growls echoed close behind, shattering the eerie quiet of the wood. But Elowen felt a chilling certainty that it was futile. Against this thing Bryn had become, nothing would suffice. A surge of obsidian energy slammed into her, hurling her against a knotty oak. The blow winded her, momentarily painting her vision with sickly greens and blacks. She blinked, fighting the disorientation, and found him looming over her. Bryn, yet profoundly not him. The boy she cherished, the one she had loved, was entombed beneath layers of shadow and fury. Unholy fire blazed in his eyes, and the air thrummed with malevolent power. "Running now?" His voice was a gravelly rasp, devoid of warmth, a stark contrast to the gentle cadence she remembered. It felt like a violation of her very being, worse than any mere physical trauma. "Did you truly believe you could evade me? Escape what you wrote?" Greta, a furious, blurred shape, lodged her attack, but Bryn remained unmoved. With a dismissive gesture, a wall of darkness erupted, sending the wolf sprawling. Elowen gasped, scrambling back, the throbbing in her side a secondary concern. "Bryn, please. This isn't who you are." A harsh, hollow laugh ripped from him, echoing through the defiled clearing. "Isn't me? This is precisely what you sculpted. The boy you rejected? Gone. Weak. Pathetic. This is ascendance. This is what you denied." Elowen inched forward, her heart throbbing with a sorrow so profound it threatened to shatter her from within. "I misjudged, Bryn. I was afraid. I didn't understand the weight of it." "Afraid?" He spat the word like poison. "You feared love? Intimacy? You embraced fear, Elle. You sentenced me to this." A sweeping gesture encompassed the blighted trees, the unnatural stillness of this corrupted place. "To this prison of your making." She swallowed, desperately seeking words that could pierce the darkness constricting him. "The bonded remains, Bryn. I can feel it humming between us. You perceive it too." His gaze flickered, a fleeting glimpse of humanity, a shadow of vulnerability, before the darkness clamped down again. "Falsehoods. The bond is twisted, perverted. It is a shackle, Elle, binding you to my torment, and you will know suffering." "But why this carnage?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why hurt the pack? Destroy our home?" "Our pack?" He advanced a step, his shadow engulfing her. "You severed my ties to that pack the instant you cast me aside. You exiled me. Now they will witness true dominion. They will understand the price of your betrayal." "The Whispering Woods," she breathed, a horrifying realization dawning. "It amplified your pain, didn't it? Your resentment. It fed upon it." A fleeting spasm of anguish contorted his features. "The woods unveiled the truth. They revealed the crushing weight of your rejection, the desolate emptiness you left behind. They cultivated the seed of darkness you planted in me." Elowen reached, fingers trembling. "Allow me to help, Bryn. Let me draw the pain away." He recoiled as if scorched. "Do not touch me. Your touch is venom, your love, a fabrication. It's no lie," she insisted, tears welling. "I know I wounded you, Bryn. I know I stumbled. But this can be undone. We can undo it. Repair it?" Another rasping laugh. a sound that scraped against bone and sent icicles through her veins. There is nothing to salvage, only obliteration. You shattered me, Elowin. Now, I will return the favor. I will dismantle your pack, demolish everything you hold sacred. He raised his hand, unleashing a torrent of dark power. Greta, recovered, hurled herself into the path of the blast, absorbing the brunt of the assault. She yelped, crumpling at Elowin's feet. Greta! Elowin knelt, cradling the wolf's head. Bryn, cease this madness. You are harming innocents. Innocent? His tone was dripping with scorn. There is no innocence, only choices, and you dictated this destiny for us all, Elowin. He advanced, eyes burning like dying embers, and Elowin understood she couldn't prevail. Not yet. Not now. She had to flee, devise a means to cure him, to halt the corruption before it consumed everything. She met Greta's gaze, her loyal friend, her stalwart protector, and a resolve solidified. Go, Greta, she urged, her voice shaky yet resolute. Return to the pack. Tell them what has transpired. Say I regret everything. Greta whined, nudging against Elowin, refusing to desert her. Go, Elowin cried, shoving her away. I'll be right behind you. Just go. With a final, mournful glance, Greta spun and vanished into the oppressive shadows. Elowin was alone, confronting the Dark Alpha, the boy she once cherished, the monster she had, in some way, enabled. She knew this battle was unwinnable, but she wouldn't yield. She wouldn't permit him to extinguish everything she cherished. What is it you desire, Bryn? She asked, her voice level despite the terror clawing at her throat. A cruel, predatory smile stretched his lips, sending shivers down her spine. I want you to suffer, El, to taste the agony I have endured, to witness the slow disintegration of everything you hold dear. And then, I want you to beg for oblivion. He lunged, and Elowin steeled herself for the inevitable, but as the wave of darkness washed over her, she glimpsed something in his eyes, a faint echo of the boy he had been, a lingering spark of the love they had shared. And in that instant, she knew that somewhere, buried deep within the Dark Alpha, Bryn still existed, and she had to unearth him. The world became nothing. Shadows unleashed, a feral bellow tore through the woods, vibrating through Elowin's very bones. She lurched, a jolt of agony shooting through her injured shoulder. Beside her, Greta gasped, hand pressed tight against her side. The force of Bryn's initial assault had clearly inflicted more damage than she admitted. Go, Elowin croaked, her voice strained. Alert the others. Tell them what he's become. Greta's stubborn gaze refused to meet hers. I won't abandon you. You must. They need to know. I'll try to delay him. Elowin recognized the fragility of her promise, a desperate gambit. Hampering Bryn felt insurmountable, yet each second she eked out was a gift to her kin. Before Greta could protest, the gloom congealed, writhing like phantoms unleashed from the forest's heart. They solidified into grotesque canine shapes, eyes ablaze with unholy fire. No longer wolves, they were extensions of Bryn's encroaching darkness. Greta, run, now! Elowin shoved her southward, toward their territory. This time, Greta didn't argue. She heard the dire weight in Elowin's plea. She whirled and vanished into the dense thicket, her flight fueled by terror and allegiance. Elowin braced herself against the encroaching horrors. They snarled, a chorus of malevolence that amplified Bryn's fury. He remained behind them, a silhouette swathed in umbra, his argent eyes blazing with unnatural fervor. Once magnificent, he was now a terrifying specter, irretrievably lost. "Bryn!" she cried, her voice wavering despite her resolve. "Please, stop this descent. This isn't you." A frigid, empty laugh echoed through the trees, chilling her to the core. "Not me? This is the creature you sculpted, Elwyn. A monster." The shadowy beings lunged. Elwyn sidestepped the first, feeling the icy graze of its claws across her arm. She bit back a cry, ignoring the stinging sensation. She couldn't shift, not yet. Transformation equaled aggression, a declaration of open conflict, and she refused to war against him. Not like this. She danced through the onslaught, relying on ingrained reflexes and her intimate knowledge of the terrain. She ducked a swipe, rolled beneath another, her mind churning, searching for any spark of the Bryn she treasured. "Remember the lake, Bryn?" she called, her voice ragged. "The summer we turned 15? We swam until moonrise. You pointed out the constellations." The shadows flickered, their assault momentarily disorganized. Bryn's expression, visible for a heartbeat, registered a flash of confusion, an echo of the youth he once was. The moment shattered. His features hardened, the darkness spiraling around him with renewed force. "Lies," he spat. "All fabrications. You never cared." He lifted a hand, and the shadows surged forward, fueled by unbridled malice. Elwyn was forced into pure survival, her every movement dictated by instinct. She vaulted a fallen trunk, narrowly avoiding gnashing jaws. She kicked one creature into a tree, but they were legion. She knew her stamina was failing. Her shoulders screamed in protest, and the shadows seemed to anticipate her every parry. She had to reach Bryn, pierce the gloom that had consumed him. But how? "You taught me archery, Bryn!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the boughs. "Remember? I was hopeless, always hitting the neighboring target. You laughed so hard you almost tumbled from the tree stand." Again, a pause. A hesitant beat in the shadow's merciless assault. Bryn's hand trembled, the darkness around him seeming to waver with uncertainty. "Cece," he ground out, his voice thick with torment. "Stop trying to remind you who you are," Elwyn finished. She risked a glance, her heart clenching at his inner turmoil. "Because I know he's still inside, Bryn. The boy I cherished." The shadows hung suspended. Bryn's face was a study in anguish, his silver eyes battling the encroaching darkness. For a fleeting moment, Elwyn believed she might reach him, pull him back from the precipice. Then, a tidal wave of shadows engulfed him. His eyes burned with a dreadful intensity, extinguishing any trace of the youth she once knew. He threw his head back and roared, a sound that shattered the fragile hope blossoming in her soul. The shadows descended with renewed vicious determination. No hesitation, no flicker of doubt. Relentless, fueled by Bryn's agony and his burning need for vengeance. Elwyn knew she couldn't prevail, not like this. But she wouldn't surrender. She would persist, continue striving, until her final breath. Because even against impossible odds, a faint ember of hope lingered within. The hope that she could somehow, one day, salvage the boy she had lost, the boy who had become the Dark Alpha. She twisted, sidestepped, and blocked, her actions morphing into a frenzied dance for survival. A searing pain ripped through her leg as one of the shadows scored its claws across her calf. She stumbled, yet pressed onward, driven by adrenaline and a desperate prayer. She had to buy Greta passage. She had to safeguard her people. And against all reason, she had to reclaim Bryn, even if it demanded total sacrifice. The forest floor became a kaleidoscope of motion and shadow, the air heavy with the scent of pine needles and the biting tang of dark energies. Eowyn could feel her strength waning, her vision blurring at the periphery. But she refused to yield. She would not allow Bryn to triumph. She would battle for him, for her pack, for the glimmer of a dawn free from the creeping darkness. Even if that dawn felt remote, a phantom dream lost within the shadows, she would fight on. She had no other choice. A flicker of light, each strike from Bryn, unleashed a tempest of gloom, gouging the land and eroding the last vestiges of Eowyn's resolve. She gasped, pain a searing brand on her ribs with each ragged breath. But within the unrelenting onslaught, a crack appeared, a microsecond of wavering, a flaw in his otherwise flawless, deadly artistry. Barely noticeable, akin to a skip in the nightmare now consuming him. Yet it existed. He moved with the inexorable advance of a squall, yet a subtle reluctance flickered beneath, as if two distinct minds clashed within the same ravaged vessel. That instant, that hairline fracture in his ebony shell was all Eowyn required. "Bryn!" Her voice, ragged and thin, knifed through the surrounding chaos. It echoed against the trees, a desperate supplication carried on the wind. "It's me, Eowyn. Please come back." He stilled, just momentarily, but enough. His head canted almost imperceptibly, like a predator sniffing the air for a familiar scent. The shadows churned around him, a restless sea restrained by an unseen force. Ignoring the white-hot agony searing her side, she pressed her advantage. "Remember the training grounds? The stream where we'd race? You always feigned defeat, even though you were swifter." She conjured a weak smile, a spectral echo of brighter days. "Remember how furious I'd get at your charade." The dark alpha stood mute, a dark monolith. Yet his posture had subtly altered, his powerful shoulders no longer set in unwavering aggression. The shadows billowed around him, mirroring the storm she hoped to awaken within his heart. "The summer festival, Bryn. Recall the summer festival? We were 10, and we slipped away from the pack gathering. We went to the Whispering Falls, and you swore you would be my protector, always." Eowyn's words were a lifeline flung into a tempestuous ocean. A muscle jumped in his jawline, a subtle twitch, barely registering. Yet to Eowyn, it was a beacon cutting through the deepening night. She persisted, her voice gaining strength with each invocation. "You promised you'd reveal the constellations to me, Bryn. You knew their names, their legends. You said we'd forge a destiny, brighter than any star that shines." She closed her eyes briefly, picturing his youth, his face illuminated by youthful ambition. The air thrummed with unseen power. The shadows pulsed, contracting and expanding as though struggling to confine an inner rebellion. Bryn remained statue still, but a deep groan, guttural and tormented, ripped from his throat. Not the growl of a monster, but the cry of a soul imprisoned. "Remember the moonstone ceremony? We stood shoulder to shoulder, vowing to safeguard the pack, to lead them with fortitude and empathy. That was you, Bryn, empathetic. You were the most valiant, most compassionate wolf I caw." "Knew!" She opened her eyes, meeting his abyss-like gaze. Yet, within that darkness, she discerned a spark, a dim ember, almost invisible, but undeniably present. She saw it in the way the shadows balked at entirely swallowing his eyes. in the tremor shuddering through his hulking frame. "Bryn, please. Fight it. I know you're in there. I know the real you is still present." She edged closer, disregarding the alarm screeching within her. "Remember the oaths we swore, the dreams we held. Don't let the darkness triumph." His eyes, those pools of night, flickered again. This time, the glimmer burned brighter, more pronounced. For a fleeting moment, Elowen recognized a trace of the boy she had adored, the boy she had rejected, the boy who had envisioned a future awash in light and affection. His breath caught in his throat. The darkness around him seemed to shrink back, as if scorched by the sudden eruption of his true essence. A single syllable, barely a whisper, escaped his lips. Elowen. The sound of her name, uttered with such anguish and yearning, tore at her heart. Tears blurred her vision. It was him. He was still there, interred beneath layers of corruption, but striving to break free. "Bryn," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm here. I'm right here." The shadows surged, as though sensing the shift in power. They clawed at his face, attempting to re-establish their dominion. Bryn flinched, his features contorting in silent agony. "Leave her be!" The command erupted from his core, vibrating the very ground. Pure alpha authority, laced with torment and resistance. The shadows faltered, momentarily subdued by the strength of his will. But the respite was ephemeral. The darkness regrouped, tightening its hold. Bryn's eyes glazed over once more, the flicker of light extinguished. His face solidified, becoming an impassive mask. "Foolish girl," he grated, his voice once again devoid of feeling. "Did you genuinely believe you could reach me? The Bryn you knew has ceased to exist. There is only the Dark Alpha now." He raised his hand, the shadows gathering into a swirling vortex of power. Elowen braced herself, knowing the impending strike would be devastating. That even as the darkness loomed, she held fast to the memory of that spark, the sound of her name upon his lips. A fragile hope, a lone ember against encroaching night, but it gave her the strength to persevere. She would unearth a path to restore him. She had to. For Bryn, for her pack, for herself. The momentary flash had revealed what was possible. Now, she simply needed to discover how to nurture that ember into a full-blown inferno. The truth unveiled the taste of copper-filled Elowen's mouth as she struggled to sit, her arms protesting. Bryn loomed, a stark silhouette against the moonlit clearing, a palpable aura of malevolent force radiating from him. Agony stabbed at her with each shallow breath, yet she locked eyes with the inferno that had replaced his familiar, warm gaze. At the edge of the scene, swallowed by the shadows and thorny embrace of the bushes, Greta watched silently, her face a study in suppressed terror. Logic screamed at her to run, to alert the others, but a fragile tendril of hope rooted her to the spot, a desperate refusal to believe what unfolded. "Bryn," Elowen croaked, her plea swallowed by the sighing wind. "This isn't you." His head cocked, a predator's curiosity replacing recognition. "Bryn is no more." The Dark Alpha's voice resonated, a bone-chilling cadence that pulsed through the woods. "Only power remains." Swallowing against a fresh wave of pain, she persisted. "That's not true. He's in there. I glimpsed him just a moment ago." She clawed her way onto her knees, inching forward. "That flicker of hesitation, the anguish in your expression, that was you, Bryn. I felt it." He remained an unyielding bulwark of shadow. "You flatter yourself, little wolf. You mistake desire for reality." "Perhaps," Elowen conceded, her voice cracking. "But isn't that the essence of love? seeing the potential in someone, even when they're blind to it themselves. She paused, summoning her resolve. This was the crux, the reckoning. She had to expose the fear that had haunted her, the root of this nightmare. It wasn't that I didn't love you, Bryn. Gods, I loved you with a ferocity that terrified me. The confession hum, raw and exposed, in the still air. Greta gasped, her hand covering her mouth in shock. It had been a secret she'd guarded closely. Bryn's eyes narrowed, a fleeting, indecipherable emotion crossing his features. Terrified? He echoed, the word dripping with scorn. Love is dominion, the strength to conquer, to command. No, Elowen countered, shaking her head. Love is as opening yourself. It's entrusting your heart, your very being, to another. And I was crippled by the fear of losing myself within you, of becoming merely a reflection of you, of forfeiting control. She squeezed her eyes shut, reliving the claiming ceremony, the relentless pressure of the bond, the dizzying sense of merging. I saw my mother, so utterly devoted to my father, consumed by his every need, his whim. She was diminished. I refused that fate. I refused to surrender Elowen. Silence descended, punctuated only by the frantic drumbeat of Elowen's pulse. She opened her eyes, searching Bryn's face for a crack in his mask, a sign of comprehension. The crimson light in his eyes intensified, swirling like a malevolent galaxy. He clenched his fists, the earth trembling beneath him. A guttural growl vibrated in his chest, a sound of profound torment. Controlly, he breathed, the word laced with venom. The only thing I ever craved, to forge my own path, to finally be free. But you're shackled now, Bryn, Elowen implored, her voice thick with unshed tears. You're a mere pawn, dancing to the whims of this darkness. Is this liberation? Is this the future you envisioned? The inner conflict raged, etched on the contorted planes of his face, evident in the tremor of his hands. He swayed, buffeted by an unseen storm. Breathless, Greta watched with a blend of dread and a tenacious hope. She detected a chink in the Dark Alpha's armor, a fleeting glimpse of the man trapped within. But would it suffice? Losing yourself, Bryn repeated, his voice a bare rasp. He clawed at his temples, as if trying to excise something. The voices, they're relentless. Elowen seized her chance. She edged forward again, ignoring the fire in her side. Fight them, Bryn. You possess the strength. You always have. She reached out, her fingertips grazing his hand. He flinched, recoiling as from a scorching brand. The crimson glow flared, and the darkness thickened, solidifying into a palpable barrier. Weakness! He roared, his voice a storm of fury. Opening oneself is weakness. I will not be vulnerable. He wrenched his hand away, his fingers contorting into talons. The fragile bridge had shattered. The ember of humanity snuffed out. You chose this, Elowen, he snarled, his eyes burning with antipathy. You sealed our fate. He raised his hand, dark energy coalescing into a swirling vortex of destruction. Knowing she could delay no longer, Greta seized her opportunity. As Bryn prepared to unleash his power, she vanished into the shadows, flitting silently through the undergrowth, each rustle of leaves a potential death sentence. She had to reach the pack, to warn them that their alpha's heir had been twisted into a living nightmare, born of their own fears. And perhaps, just perhaps, there remained a sliver of hope to salvage them all. Even Bryn. Elowen steeled herself for the inevitable, the encroaching darkness, the crushing weight of her choices. Yet, Even as the abyss beckoned, a faint spark of defiance flickered within. She had witnessed Bryn, however briefly, and she knew, with unwavering conviction, that he wasn't completely lost. He was buried, suffocated, but not extinguished. And she would move heaven and earth to drag him back into the light, even if it meant confronting the darkness alone. Embracing the bond, the encroaching gloom tightened its grip, a constricting anaconda threatening to crush Bryn's windpipe. It was visible to Elwyn, a churning undercurrent rippling just beneath his flesh, vying for dominion over the man she cherished. His eyes, once the hue of honeyed sunsets, were now opaque voids, reflecting only the abyss. A subtle shiver racked him, a silent testament to the internal war. "It fights back," Bryn rasped, his voice a fractured echo. "It craves everything." Elwyn's heart thrummed a frantic tattoo against her ribs, a desperate counterpoint to the encroaching shadows. The pull of their connection intensified, a relentless undertow threatening to engulf her. Ice-laced dread speared her resolve. Annihilation. The idea was a petrifying chasm. But witnessing Bryn's torment, the raw anguish etched onto his very being, she couldn't simply observe his demise. "Not on my watch," she declared, her voice resolute despite the tremor in her grip. "I will not let it consume you, Bryn." A harsh, fractured sound escaped him, grating against her soul. "You believe you possess the power to halt it? It's futile, Elwyn. I am already lost." "No," she insisted, stepping forward. A tangible darkness pulsed around her, pricking her skin like static. "A spark remains. I can sense it, and I know you can as well." His gaze faltered, a fleeting glimpse of the man she remembered struggling to surface. A frail tendril of optimism unfurled within her. A perilous gamble, a headlong dive into uncertainty, but she had to intervene. For Bryn, for their community, for her own sake. She closed her eyes, centering herself on the bond that united them, the unbreakable filament that had always existed, despite her best efforts to deny it. Frayed, weakened by her resistance, yet undeniably present. She reached out, not with trepidation, but with acceptance, a fervent supplication. "I am no longer afraid," she breathed, the words a delicate offering to the storm. "I am no longer afraid of our connection, Bryn. I am no longer afraid of you." A seismic jolt ripped through her. The darkness recoiled, taken aback by her unforeseen acquiescence. Bryn cried out, his body contorting as the opposed powers clashed for supremacy. Scalding pain ripped through her, a fiery torment threatening to overwhelm her senses. Visions flooded her mind, shared memories of sun-drenched games, rigorous training, whispered secrets beneath a canopy of stars. The bond served as a gateway, a bridge into his very soul, one she was now traversing. The darkness renewed its assault, preying on her vulnerability, seeking to exploit her openness. It murmured seductive promises of authority, of domination, of a world reborn in its design. A dark allure, temptation snaked through her, threatening to unravel her composure. But then she truly saw Bryn, caught within the swirling vortex. His eyes, for a split second, shone with clarity. He gazed at her, not with the venomous glare of the dark alpha, but with the raw desperation of a drowning man. "Assist me," he mouthed, the words barely discernible. It was all the impetus she needed. She embraced the bond wholeheartedly, relinquishing control, accepting the risk of obliteration. An act of terrifying conviction, a leap into the unknown. She bared her soul completely, inviting Bryn into her heart, into her mind, into her very essence. A surge of raw energy exploded between them, a blinding effulgence that drove back the encroaching shadows. The ground quaked, the trees writhed, the air throbbed with untamed power. A cataclysmic release, a fusion of souls, a last-ditch effort to salvage what was nearly lost. The darkness emitted a furious, frustrated shriek as its hold on Bryn eroded. He gasped, his body racked by convulsions as the light labored to purify him. Elwyn felt herself being drawn, contorted, stretched to her very limits as the bond neared its breaking point. She clung fast, refusing to release her grip, channeling all her love, all her hope, all her very essence into the connection. Then, a profound stillness. The light dissipated, leaving in its wake an unsettling tranquility. The darkness retreated, shrinking back into the recesses. Bryn slumped forward, his body limp and insensate. Elwyn stumbled, her legs giving way, her vision swimming. She crawled towards him, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. He still breathed, but his face was ashen, his features drawn. A faint residue of darkness clung to his skin. She reached out, her hand trembling, and brushed his cheek. His eyes fluttered open. Initially, they were vacant, devoid of all recognition. Then, gradually, focus returned. He looked at her, his gaze questioning, disoriented. "Elwyn," he rasped, his voice a parched whisper. "What occurred?" Relief washed over her in a tidal wave, so intense it threatened to buckle her knees. He remained. The darkness hadn't achieved total domination. Yet she knew, with absolute certainty, that the conflict was far from over. The darkness remained close, biding its time for another attack, while their bond, although reinforced, was fragile, stretched to its breaking point. She had rescued him, for the moment. But the real trial lay ahead. She needed to discover how to mend him, to eradicate the darkness forever, before it destroyed them both. To accomplish this, she had to confront the darkness residing within herself, the fear that had prompted her to reject him in the first place. "We'll navigate this," she declared, her voice ringing with a newfound strength. "Together." The unleashed energy, her incandescent spirit clashing with his encroaching gloom, tore through the space separating them. A flare of light like a miniature sun erupted, shoving her back, the metallic tang of ozone coating her mouth. It wasn't a destructive blast, but a raw, untamed surge, a psychic battleground where the very core of Bryn was at stake. The air vibrated, the familiar forest scents momentarily eclipsed by a fetid reek rising from the shadows coiled around him. She faltered, regaining her balance, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. The light had carved out a respite, a precarious breach in the encroaching darkness. She had to exploit it. Elwyn acted on pure instinct, guided by the tenacious thread of the mate bond that, despite everything, still bound them. She reached out, her hand trembling as her fingers grazed his frigid skin. Contact felt funereal, the vibrant heat she remembered supplanted by an icy, unnatural stillness. Panic threatened to seize her, but she suppressed it, locking onto the ember of Bryn struggling beneath the surface, the resilient spark refusing to be quenched. This wasn't a moment for cowardice, it was a time for love, for unwavering faith in the man she knew still resided within. With eyes shut tight, she funneled everything she possessed, every iota of affection, of remorse, of anticipation into that single point of contact. Not a gentle stream, but a deluge, a tidal wave of emotion cascading from her soul into his. She recalled their first meeting, a lanky, awkward boy with compassionate eyes and a smile capable of thawing the most hardened heart. She remembered shared laughter, Confidences whispered beneath the ancient oak, the futures they had envisioned before fear and doubt had poisoned their bond. Those memories, once painful reminders, now became weapons, beacons of light against the encroaching abyss. "Bryn," she breathed, her voice raspy with feeling. "It's me, Elowen. I'm here. I'm so sorry." The words felt insufficient, a meager offering against the vastness of her mistake, but they were all she had to give. She encountered resistance, a wall of frigid indifference pushing back against her love's advance. The darkness fought, clinging to Bryn, contorting his features into a grotesque imitation of his former handsome self. His eyes, once warm hazel pools, were now vortexes of swirling shadow, reflecting only emptiness and suffering. A guttural growl emanated from his chest, a sound both recognizable and alien, a warped echo of the man she cherished. "Leave me." The voice grated, the words laced with chilling malice. It was undeniably Bryn's timbre, but something else resonated within it, something ancient and corrupting that had infested him. "You should have stayed away." Tears coursed down Elowen's cheeks, but she remained resolute. "I won't. I can't. I was wrong, Bryn, terribly wrong. But I'm here now, and I'm not going to allow you to be consumed by this." She pressed forward, dismissing the searing cold radiating from his flesh. She plunged deeper, bypassing the superficial gloom, seeking the true heart of Bryn, the man she knew was trapped inside. She glimpsed flashes of his memories, twisted and warped by the encroaching darkness, his pain amplified into an unbearable torrent, his insecurities blown out of proportion. She saw the moment she had rejected him, the naked anguish in his gaze, the way his world seemed to shatter around him. The darkness had exploited that pain, nurtured it into a cruel instrument. Yet she also perceived other memories, glimpses of his innate integrity, his unwavering devotion, his capacity for love and empathy. She saw him tending to a wounded bird, comforting a sobbing child, defending the defenseless. These memories were like dying embers, flickering weakly in the gloom, longing for ignition. She honed in on those embers, pouring her affection and conviction into them, fanning them with her fervent hope, praying they would ignite. She communicated with him, not through spoken language, but with her very essence, transmitting images of their history, reminding him of his true self, of who he was still capable of becoming. Slowly, painfully, she sensed a change. The resistance diminished. The icy grip on her hand loosened ever so slightly. The guttural growl quieted, replaced by ragged, irregular breaths. A flicker of recognition returned to his eyes, a trace of humanity cutting through the swirling murk. "Elowen?" he croaked, barely audible. Weak, strained, but undoubtedly him. Undeniably Bryn. Exhilaration surged through her, a current of pure, unadulterated joy. "I'm here, Bryn. I'm here." She pressed on without pause, daring not to falter. She continued to channel her love into him, cleansing away the darkness, healing the wounds that had festered for so long. She felt the darkness retreating, slowly, grudgingly, like a riptide receding from the beach. It resisted, twisting and convulsing, struggling to maintain its grip, but her love proved too strong, her resolve unshakable. The swirling shadows in his eyes began to dissipate, exposing the familiar hazel depths beneath. The grotesque distortion of his features softened, replaced by the beloved contours of his face, etched with fatigue and suffering, yet undeniably Bryn. The icy chill that had permeated him began to fade, substituted by a faint warmth. He shuddered, his body convulsing, as if shaking off the lingering effects of a prolonged, harrowing nightmare. Finally, with a concluding surge of strength, the darkness relinquished its grasp. It did not disappear entirely, but contracted, retreating further into the shadows, leaving Bryn weakened but liberated. He collapsed against her, his full weight pressing against her, his breathing shallow and ragged. She embraced him tightly, burying her face in his hair, tears of relief streaming. He was alive. He was himself. She had succeeded. But even amidst her rejoicing, a chilling premonition settled in her stomach. The darkness remained, lurking, awaiting its next opportunity. This wasn't the conclusion. This was merely the inception. She had rescued Bryn, for now, but the true battle had just begun, and she sensed, with terrifying certainty, that she would have to confront her own inner darkness, her own fears and vulnerabilities, if she was to truly heal him and prevent this from reoccurring. The corrupted wild called to her, and in its enigmatic depths, she knew she would discover not only the source of Bryn's torment, but also the key to her own deliverance. A new dawn Bryn convulsed, a shudder ripping through him like a storm. Then the encroaching shadows ebbed, a retreating black surf. The infernal fire that had blazed in his eyes sputtered, the corrupted light yielding to the familiar pools of sapphire. He blinked, confusion etching itself onto his face, and a chilling premonition gripped Elwyn, a fear that the abyss might reclaim him. But it didn't. Instead, lucidity crept in, a dawn after a long night of terror. "Elwyn?" The word rasped from his throat, a parched croak, as if dredged up from years of silence. He reached for her, his hand trembling like a leaf in the wind, fingertips ghosting across her cheek with heartbreaking fragility. Relief poured through her, so intense it nearly stole her balance. She caught his faltering weight, his strength utterly depleted, and gently lowered him to the earth, enfolding him in her embrace. He felt heavier than memory allowed, his muscles tight and wired from the dark possession. "I'm here, Bryn. Just breathe." She swept a stray lock of raven hair from his brow, her touch lingering, a silent reassurance. His eyes closed, his face a mask of exhaustion and a sorrow that mirrored her own hidden pain. What happened to me?" He tried to rise, but she restrained him with gentle pressure. "Stay still. You're safe." I broke the hold. His eyes snapped open, searching hers, disbelief battling with the fragile bloom of hope. "Broke it? From what?" The question trembled with nascent fear, a growing understanding of the chasm he'd teetered on the edge of. Elwyn hesitated, weighing her words. "You were altered, Bryn, twisted, but it's finished now." She kept silent about her role, the painful rejection that had driven him into the blighted woods a secret burden she would shoulder alone. Another tremor passed through him, this time tinged with a raw, self-directed disgust. I recall fragments, obscurity, a craving, an awful, bottomless rage." He kneaded his temples, as though trying to piece together shattered fragments of a broken mirror. Did I hurt anyone?" The query was a barb to her heart. Guilt already gnawed at him, even without the full awareness of his actions. "You weren't yourself, Bryn. That wasn't you speaking." A fragile half-lie, but one born of necessity. He fixed her with a gaze of profound vulnerability that threatened to shatter her composure. "But it was, though, a hidden part. A facet I never acknowledged." He grasped her hand, his grip surprisingly firm despite his weakness. "Thank you, Elwyn, for rescuing me from my own darkness." She squeezed his hand back, a silent promise of unwavering support. "We need to return to the pack. They're waiting anxiously." He nodded, his gaze traveling over the scarred land, the trees contorted and blighted by the corrupting energy he had unleashed. The shadows, are they truly gone? Not all of them, but I believe you can quell them. He looked at her, question blooming in his eyes, then closed them, turning inward. A subtle ripple ran through him, a dark current swirling just beneath his skin. But this time, it wasn't a raging torrent. It was honest. He reopened his eyes, the sapphire depths now threaded with a faint, controlled darkness. I can feel it. The abyss is still within me, but it's subdued. With her assistance, Bryn slowly pushed himself upright, testing his footing. He swayed, and she steadied him, her arm a firm brace around his waist. He leaned into her, his breath warm against her ear. The nearness, following the trauma, sent a shiver of awareness down her spine. It was a connection denied, a link she had desperately tried to break, yet it persisted, stronger than ever. Together they began the trek back towards the pack's territory, the air heavy with the aroma of pine and damp earth. The forest held its breath, the hush broken only by the whisper of leaves and the distant cry of birds. As they progressed, Elowen noticed the scattered pockets of lingering shadow, twisted residues of the dark energy that had plagued the land. Fewer now, diminished, but stubbornly present. They reached the perimeter of the clearing where the pack waited, each wolf observing them with wary eyes. Distrust and worry clouded their features, yet a flicker of hope remained. Jessa, her second in command, stepped forward, her expression a blend of relief and concern. Elowen? Bryn? What transpired? Are you unharmed? We're well, Elowen assured them, her voice strong, projecting a confidence she struggled to feel. Bryn is returned. The corruption has been purged. A collective sigh rippled through the pack, but the underlying tension lingered. They had witnessed the havoc wrought by Bryn's corrupted form, the memory etched into their minds. Bryn advanced, his gaze sweeping across the assembly, his face etched with remorse. I know what transpired. I know the suffering I unleashed. I can't rewrite the past, but I can safeguard you now. He paused, drawing a deep breath. Shadows remain in the woods, echoes of the darkness that consumed me. I can eradicate them. He raised his hands, palms open, and a pulse of dark energy radiated from him, but it was altered. Not chaotic, not destructive. Focused, harnessed. A precise tool, rather than a cudgel. The shadows recoiled and writhed as Bryn directed the dark energy towards them, forcing them back, expelling them, until they dissolved into nothingness. The air crackled with raw power, the ground trembling momentarily, but Bryn remained resolute, his control absolute. Piece by piece, the last remnants of the darkness vanished, leaving behind an almost palpable sense of peace. Once the final shadow had dissipated, Bryn lowered his hands, his body shuddering with fatigue. The exertion had taken its pound of flesh, but his eyes held a sense of completion. He had confronted the darkness within and emerged victorious. He had proven to the pack, and perhaps more crucially, to himself, that he could tame the force that had threatened to devour him. He met Elowen's gaze, his eyes reflecting gratitude and something deeper, but profound and abiding affection she had fought so hard to suppress. It's finished, he breathed, his voice a mere thread. They're gone. Elowen moved forward and clasped his hand, her fingers twining with his. The link between them was undeniable, a force that had endured rejection, corruption, and pure shadow. A connection she could no longer deny. Thank you, Bryn, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion, for protecting us all. But even as the words left her mouth, a chilling premonition washed through her, a sense of impending doom that cast a pall over their fragile peace. The shadows might be dispelled, but the real battle was far from concluded. This was merely the opening skirmish. Whispers of hope, a lingering gloom clung to the air, a subsonic thrum that resonated deep within Elwyn. Intermingled with the suppression was a burgeoning vitality life, clawing back lost ground. Bryn, at her side, held his hand suspended over the ravaged soil, his face a study in concentration. The shadows that had once possessed him now obeyed, swirling and ebbing like ink in water. "Can you sense it?" he murmured, his voice roughened yet resonant, the ghastly distortions banished. "The earth suffers still." Elwyn shut her eyes, summoning the memory of the Whispering Woods in its verdant prime. She extended her power, not to dominate, but to soothe, to offer solace. "It's frightened," she breathed, "but it remembers dawn." Together, they set to their task, Bryn directing his disciplined darkness to leech away corruption, Elwyn steering the returning light, encouraging the shriveled plants to unfurl, the silent streams to gurgle anew. Progress came inch by painstaking inch, each reclaimed patch a testament to their unified will. From the forest's fringe, Greta watched, her breath catching in shallow gasps. To witness Bryn, no longer a fiend but a man wrestling to redeem the land he had violated, inspired both dread and anticipation. She needed to alert the pack, yet a fragment of her, clinging to the memory of Bryn as a boy, nurtured the faint hope of deliverance. She whirled and fled, the image of Elwyn and Bryn entwined in a regenerative dance imprinted on her mind, a spark in the encroaching night. Days blurred into nights fueled by tireless labor. Gradually, the forest responded. Emerald shoots pierced the soil, wildflowers dared to bloom amidst the decay, and the air, once heavy with despair, carried the fragrance of pine and moist earth. As the land mended, so did their connection. The raw, primal force of their bond remained, now tempered by understanding, absolution, and an undeniable love. One dusk, as the setting sun splashed the horizon with fiery hues, they paused, spent but fulfilled. They stood in a small glade, encircled by burgeoning moonflowers, their perfume sweetening the air. Bryn faced Elwyn, his eyes reflecting the sunset's glow instead of a malignant energy. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for not abandoning me." Elwyn reached out, her fingers tracing the strong angles of his jaw. "I never could," she confessed, her voice a mere breath. "Even when you were lost, a part of me knew you were still there." He leaned into her touch, his gaze intense. "And the darkness, Elwyn? Can you forgive that too?" She hesitated, the image of his warped form lingering. But gazing into his eyes, she saw not a monster, but a man battling inner demons. A man wounded and, in turn, wounding. A man now striving for redemption. "There's nothing to pardon, Bryn. It wasn't you." He drew her close, his arms enveloping her in a firm embrace. They stood in silence, emotions exchanged without words. Then he bent his head and kissed her, a measured, tender kiss that spoke of shared suffering, forgiveness, and a love tested and fortified by trial. Elder Rowan addressed the pack, his face creased with worry. "The reports are disturbing," he announced, his voice trembling. "Greta insists Bryn has returned. But he changed. He's collaborating with Elwyn to heal the blighted lands." A wave of disbelief swept through the crowd. "She also warns of lingering dark pockets within the forest." He paused, scanning the faces of his people. We must remain watchful. The peril may not be over. Years drifted by. Under Elwyn and Bryn's stewardship, the Whispering Woods slowly regained its former splendor. The pack, initially skeptical, came to accept Bryn. Recognizing the genuine regret in his eyes and the strength he possessed to control the darkness still within, they governed not through fear, but with wisdom and compassion, learning from past transgressions and building a future where shadows could never again take root. They cultivated a society anchored in understanding, absolution, and an unwavering faith in the power of hope. Bryn channeled his connection to the shadows to defend the pack, patrolling the perimeters and purging any residual corruption. Elwyn, with her profound connection to the land, safeguarded the health and vitality of the forest, guiding the pack toward sustainable practices and reverence for nature's equilibrium. Challenges persisted. Some could never fully absolve Bryn, seeing him as a constant reminder of the potential darkness lurking within them all. And Elwyn carried her own burdens, closely guarded secrets, and a premonition of a future threat she couldn't dispel. Yet they confronted these challenges together, their bond a source of strength and resilience. One dawn, long after the scars of Bryn's corruption had begun to fade, Elwyn and Bryn stood shoulder to shoulder on a hill overlooking the Whispering Woods. The sun ascended, painting the sky in vibrant shades of rose, violet, and gold. The forest below glowed in the soft morning light, a tapestry of green and gold attesting to their enduring love and forgiveness. "Do you ever wonder," Elwyn murmured, "if we truly healed it all? Or if some remnant of that darkness lies dormant, awaiting resurrection?" Bryn clasped her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "Perhaps," he replied, "but whatever comes, we face it as one. What matters is the lessons learned, that we embraced the light even when shadows seemed inevitable." He turned to her, his gaze filled with affection and resolve. "We are this land's protectors, Elwyn. We are the balance." They stood there a long while, watching the sunrise, whispers of hope carried on the morning breeze. The path had been long and arduous, fraught with pain and loss, but it had also forged a bond stronger than any shadow, a love that had vanquished even the deepest despair. As they surveyed the restored Whispering Woods, they knew their story was far from finished, and that they were ready to face whatever awaited them, armed with the wisdom of their past and an unwavering faith in the power of love and forgiveness. The sun scaled the heavens, banishing all lingering shadows and bathing the world in its golden glow. A new day dawned,